Hello, my name is Duncan and welcome to Bath Books, Back Away from the Donkey. And today I'm going to do a little thing I've decided to call inheritance tracks, and I've stolen this. Okay, inheritance, not tracks, inheritance books. You'll see why I said tracks in a second. And I have technically stolen this. There is a BBC Radio 4 programme which I think is on Saturday mornings, called Saturday Live, yeah, which is and they have a section on there called Inheritance Tracks, where somebody picks some music that they feel has been handed down to them from somebody and what it means to them, and then they also pick a track that they would like to music they would like to hand on to people. So I've decided to repurpose this and do inheritance books. So we can repurpose this as a hashtag inheritance books, but I'm not going to tag anybody because I think people, if they want to do it, they can do it. But if you want to, please tag me in it, and we'll be very nice to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick 3 books that have been handed down to me, sort of passed on through the ages, and why they mean something to me. And they're not always the best books in the world. They're just books that emotionally mean something to me. And then I've got one book at the end that I said I'd like to hand on to somebody. I said I don't actually have any children, so but I've got nieces and nephews. I can hand it on to them, or I can even hand it to my dogs when I pass through this mortal coil. But yeah, so I'm going to start off. I said 3 books which were technically handed down to me. So I'm going to start off with Emily Neville's It's Like This Cat. I've mentioned this before. This book here is a children's book, and it's won the Newbery Medal. I used to have a slightly different version of this, and the reason this was handed down to me was my sister had a copy from school, and I picked up and read it, basically. And it's just remembrance of that time when I picked up and read it. And it's a story about a boy in the 1960s, as stuff's changing, living in New York, and his life, and how he comes to own his cat. And I said, I still reread it occasionally, and it's got some great artwork in it from Emma Weiss. So there's 1960s artwork in there. And I said, it's the story of this boy and him growing up and his first relationship with a girl, and just some of the stuff that goes on around it. And it's all set in New York. And as with many people who don't live there, I've got a little thing about New York. It's a place I've always wanted to visit. And it's like a snapshot in time. I don't know how accurate it is time-wise, but it is a really good children's read. I think it is. I said ages 10 to 14. The version I had was a Puffin version, which had a slightly different cover to this, which was an Emma Weiss cover, which I don't think this one is. And I'd like to pick up a version of that again. But yeah, so the first one is Like This Cat, which basically my sister put me onto. And I said, it's got some weird actually, because I have a strained relationship with my sister. I've not spoken to her for a long time. Not often. We vaguely communicate occasionally, but yes, we don't really get on. But just reminds me of certain times. So yeah, that's the first book that I sort of inherited. So, book number 2. Book number 2 is big granddaddy of them all, is The Lord of the Rings. And this is, for some reason I picked this version off, but I've got this version of the Two Towers that I picked off the shelf. These were the first editions I brought, actually, with these covers. The Fellowship of the Ring and Return of the King got the same cover. And what it is when I was at school, when I started secondary school, we had an English teacher, and the English teacher, we used to have 1 hour lesson a week, and he used to read to us. He used to read for 30 minutes of it, and then we used to read a book for another 30 minutes. And he started off and he read The Hobbit. And I ended up with this English teacher for the 5 years I was in that school. And then he started reading The Lord of the Rings. And The Lord of the Rings captivated me. If you hear any weird noises, Micah's licking her leg. But yes, and it captivated me. And he basically read the whole of The Lord of the Rings. I think the only thing he briefly skipped over was the Entmoot, which goes on for a long time. But this would have been in about 1980, 81, and I was, how old would I have been there? I was, 12, 13 years old, and it just totally captivated me. And then I went out and brought my own versions, and I read them and said, these are the versions I've got. And I've been in love with Lord of the Rings ever since. So yes, that is my second of my inheritance books. And now the third one, it's quite interesting, is Dune by Frank Herbert. I keep seeing people calling it Dune. It's Dune. It's got a U in it. With this wonderful, wonderful cover. I'm not... I know a lot of people adore this novel. I don't think it's Frank Herbert's best work. I've got some other books by him that I think is better. I like the Jesus Incident, which I may have showed you the other week. I do not think that's his best book, and I do not revere it as much as some people do. But as a book, it's got some memories for me because my stepfather changed jobs and moved to we moved to a different part of the country, and he was staying over there before we found a house there to live. So we went to visit him one weekend, and we went to this hotel for a meal. And so we went to this hotel for a meal and what have you. And my stepfather, we started talking to these people, and this one guy found out that I liked science fiction. And he basically described the whole of Dune as a book to me. I didn't know it at all at the time. And he described the whole of it. And then I went out and I brought this edition. And I read it. And I really, really liked it. And it's just got the memories of the time of when we moved to that part of the country. And I think it's a great book. I don't think, as I said, I don't think it's good. I'm a big fan of the David Lynch film of it, even though it's a mess. I agree it's a mess. In fact, I probably, at the moment, prefer it over the new version, because I think the new version still got some of the same problems that the David Lynch version had, but that's a conversation for another time. But yes, Dune is my third of the books I've picked as an inheritance book. So yeah, so then I was trying to think of a book that I would like to pass down to people. And I could go for big name books and what have you, but I was just trying to think of books that I love and what I like to, sometimes feel like I'm underrepresented. So I actually picked Julian's May, A Many Coloured Lamb, which is from the Saga of the Exiles. And this is a great, great series of books. I think there's 4 in them. I think it goes Many Coloured Lamb, The Golden Talk, The Adversary. I don't know what the 4th one, it probably tells me in here actually. Probably tells me in here. But no, it starts off in the 22nd century. And basically they found a way to send people back in time to before man existed, for people to settle, but they can't communicate back there. Does a bit sound like the series Terra Nova, which I think they stole some of this. Terra Nova stole some of the idea from, but they go back in time and then they can live there. And there's some wibbly wobbly thing that they decided to work out how it doesn't affect the future. So you won't get a Sound of Thunder Ray Bradbury experience. So yes, they go back in time to there. So it follows this group of people who go back in time, and they go back. And what happened is this alien race is actually on Earth who have like psychic powers and things like this, and they almost enslave the human beings that go back with these things called talks that go around their neck. And it's just following the story of them. There's a character in here that's actually called Aiken Drum, as in the poem. There was a man called Aiken Drum, and it's just a really, really fascinating and very different series of books. It feels like fantasy. It's one of these books that feels a bit like fantasy, even though it's science fiction technically. Julia May, she was a great, great writer, and I think deserves, The Many Coloured Lamb definitely deserves more plaudits. I said, this is a book club edition I picked up a while ago. I have got some paperbacks on them as well. But yes, I'd love for this book to get more love, which is why if I pass, it's the sort of book that I'd love to pass on, because I think it's got so much going for it. So yeah, so that's my inheritance books. So I hope somebody else does it. But if not, I hope you found this interesting, these books I picked. And I've got some more videos coming towards the back in the week. and I will speak to you all very, very soon.